Hi everyone, my name is Chris Liversidge. I'm the CEO and founder at a performance marketing agency called QueryClick. So anything digital that you're doing, we can optimize. So we've been running for 14 years this year. Previous to that, I helped build what became the largest independent search marketing agency in the world until it was acquired by Publicis. So I've spent pretty much my whole career trying to find performance in a competitive marketplace. You can see here some of the customers and so on that we work with. We've always really been enterprise focused and retailer focused. We also have, and I've got a slide where you can access this, a new survey coming out, which we partnered with Censuswide to pull together, looking across 150 or so marketers, just like ourselves, trying to understand what concerns were generally for 2022. And three of the big trends that came out of that were around an increased focus on e-commerce, rising paid media cost, and the impending removal of cookies, which is happening at the end of the year for third-party cookies. Those ultimately were some of the key drivers for marketers. And I think there is an opportunity for confidence about performance optimization in 2022. But what I do think we need to do is get under the hood of our performance metrics. So if we can jump onto the next slide, I'd like to show a chart which I think can maybe illustrate that. It's a chart from December. It's one of the retail customers using our attribution platform, Corvidae. And what this is kind of illustrating, I think, is where we find opportunities for optimization and where I think 2022 can most fruitfully be spent is actually in interrogating the data that we are being given to make our decisions as performance marketers today. Many of you will have seen the news reports last week around Facebook and Google. So there's a class action lawsuit that's being pursued in America, and there's unredacted documents becoming available. And the allegations in there include allegations that Google has misrepresented actual auction costs and use the spend that they have, excuse me, kept for themselves, I suppose, to tip the scales in some of those other auctions to promote their own products. And also the CEOs of Facebook and Google have been alleged to have signed a contract with an agreement about a certain percentage of Facebook auction campaigns being won by Facebook in return for budgets being spent. These sort of class action lawsuits and these allegations are kind of on the back of a lot of question marks that were raised over the accuracy of data being provided to us in our digital marketing. And really, to get to the very heart of that, there is a way that technologically we can kind of gain control as marketers. So over the last 7 years at QueryClick, we've been developing measurement systems that use AI rather than cookie-based measurement systems. So today, most of us are using GA and Adobe for our web analytics, which uses a cookie to store an ID and a pixel to track impressions, and they stitch together based on the cookie information. We found that that was about 20% accurate, only 20% accurate. So our web analytics data, when it's being presented to us, is already quite broken. And when we then try and join that into data from the likes of Facebook or Google, attribution efforts fail. By removing that broken 20% and using AI systems instead, like our Corvidae system, we move to 95% accurate. And what I really wanted to illustrate with this chart here is that when you have good attribution applied to our performance activity in our different digital channels, you can find really effective ways to spend. This chart shows that Facebook is actually over-reporting revenue for this particular retailer by 250%, which is really an astonishing amount of overrepresentation. And to illustrate kind of the opportunity, I guess, in this particular example here, reallocating £2,000 of media spend returns £30,000 of revenue. So it's coming in at something like a 15-to-1 ROAS. Now that's just within channel. Clearly there's other opportunities by looking across different platforms and reallocating budget with a correct view of revenue and no longer relying on the revenues being reported directly by the ad tech, which has definitely got a few question marks being raised against its accuracy. If we can jump onto the next slide. So the report itself, I think, I've touched on one area where there's key concerns. The report itself goes into great detail. There's a QR code there. It's free to download. I would encourage everyone to take a look. As I say, this was run by Census-wide, 150 or so marketers just like us. I do recommend digging into that. Pressure on commercial performance in digital was the standout area. I think 50% of respondents stated that they had no real comfort or confidence that the numbers they were looking at were correct. So that previous chart is showing how we can start to capture that by using AI-led analytics as opposed to cookie-based analytic systems, which really have been proven not to be fit for purpose. Some of the other insights in there I think are really fascinating. 88% of respondents find it difficult to compete with online marketplaces. So those of you who are also running in Amazon or alongside Amazon, and concerned about Amazon overcompeting or underbidding and driving customers away from D2C platforms. That was another standout area. So there's a host of recommendations in there about what we as marketers can do to try and combat some of those areas. So that's very much a whistle-stop tour. I think there might be some questions, Andy, and we can pass through some of those.
Yeah, I think the link, by the way, is in the chat if anyone wants to download that report. Awesome. Facebook doesn't come out of that shining, does it? I mean, should no. People still be using Facebook?
It's a good question. I think the fact that you can find 15 to 1 ROAS campaigns tells me that you should still be using it, but certainly not to the extent that we are. Something like 95% of us have more than 90% of our media spend in either Facebook or Google. That was a report from the IAB towards the end of last year. New platforms like TikTok, of course, are very popular, quite expensive on a sort of side-by-side comparison to the likes of Facebook. And of course, there is a lot of cohort overlap sometimes in terms of the message you're trying to give. I certainly would encourage people to be expanding out into TikTok and doing experimental budget testing there, but also revisiting some older technologies that have matured a bit. So programmatic used to be, the bee's knees. We were all very excited about that when that first came along. Didn't necessarily deliver on its promise. We ended up essentially doing lots of retargeting through that. Very little effective prospecting. One of the other benefits of really good attribution is that you can genuinely prospect effectively. We have a few case studies there that show that we can take spend from paid search campaigns that are underperforming, reallocate them into display activity via programmatic, and reduce cost per acquisition by 86%. So there's definitely plenty of exploration that's available. The big bridge that we all need to cross is to move into thinking about correctly attributed data, move away from cookie-based measurement systems like GA and Adobe, and really start embracing the idea that those systems are also a form of attribution, and it's a 20% accurate form of attribution. Let's go and start using 85, 95% forms of attribution.
Okay. You mentioned TikTok there. Is it with TikTok? Is it a bit of an unknown at the moment? Is it because it's not necessarily, it's a newish platform, isn't it? And is it a case of like sort of trying things a little bit, maybe learning, but getting in early, and then you could sort of go on and make a lot of money out of it?
Yeah, 100%. It is a test and learn. I mean, I would argue all platforms should be test and learn. Certainly, if you're not spending in there, you should be. One of the things that I saw over the last year was the overall increase in cost per acquisition across Facebook and Google in particular. It's one of the reasons I was sort of focusing in on that area. I saw a few different reports of over 100% increase in cost per clicks or cost per acquisitions in social and in search. And actually I saw an Axios report last week. Social cost per 1,000 impressions are up 44% on average. Facebook is 33% up. Google is 23% up on a CPC basis. So TikTok, absolutely. If that's not part of your mix, get into that. Just as a function of having a slightly lower volume of auction activity, there are opportunities there to reach new customers at a lower rate. But we have certainly seen also that on a side-by-side basis, it is a bit more expensive in TikTok than it is compared to, say, for example, Instagram today, just on a pure impression basis. But the results, I think, stand up to really good scrutiny. So yeah, if you're not spending in TikTok right now, you definitely should be. And if you're not spending in programmatic prospecting with good attribution and an idea of how to measure that in a post-cookie world, that is something to be doing Q1 this calendar year for sure.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks very much, Chris, for sharing that.
My pleasure. Thank you, Andy.